Hello, welcome to Bear in Mind's Double Feature Film Club, where we take a topic and pair a couple of films together for what we think will be a nice double feature for those of you at home to watch. This week, our topic is silent movies.
Yeah,
Been an interesting one.
It was, yeah, because it was choosing one really, because I haven't watched a silent film in a long time, really. So there was, I think there's some obvious choices. You've got your Chaplins and your Keatons.
Mine might be. My choice could be construed as lazy. However, the more I wrap my hand, I thought about using Nosferatu.
Oh, okay.
But I didn't really know what to pair it with. I thought of a lot of films I like, silent films I like. The link between them would be that they are just both silent films. And I don't think that was enough of a link to construe a good double bill out of it. Like, I love Sunrise. I love Nosferatu. I love Metropolis. Those three films are not films that will combine into a double bill together well. They're all great silent films, but they're all very different films. Different genres, different. And I think part of the problem is sometimes we may think of silent film as a genre when,
and it isn't.
Not.
No, it's a medium.
Before the late 20s.
I had similar thoughts. I have a feeling we are going to share one of the film choices, although I do have a backup, which I will.
I have a feeling from what Ariel was saying beforehand. I have a feeling we actually share a film here as well.
Yes, I do, yeah. I'm not gonna change my choice if we are sharing this film, but I will mention my alternative choice.
If we pick the same film, it's just an auto include into the end.
Yeah, and I think it's because if it is the film I think it is, it's significant. It's very significant, and in ways I think we'll discuss. But yeah, I have two alternative choices as well, so I will mention those if we have to, but just not in as much detail.
So yeah, I like silent films. I don't watch many of them, and you have to really be in the mood for them. But if you've never watched any, I would say definitely give a go. And I would probably say start with some comedies because they are easier to watch than silent dramas or silent horrors or silent sci-fi. Because effectively pratfalls never go out of fashion. Right?
No. Indeed. Right. Would you like to go first then?
Okay. I have props.
Oh.
My first choice is Harold Lloyd's Safety Last. It is a silent comedy from 1923. It has similar with a few silent comedians played with the idea of a fast-paced modern city life and how people responded to that. Again, spoilers for all these films we're going to discuss. Well, we'll try and avoid certain because obviously we want you to watch these films, so we won't.
Although this is 97 years old now, so yes. I mean,
but if the idea of a show is to convince people to watch a film, you don't want to necessarily spoil that whole film
for
them. But yeah, Safety Last is about Harold Lloyd, who plays the boy. It's something from like a lot of silent film comedians, especially, basically just play themselves. Or
well, I mean, if you
characters that were meant to be personifications of themselves.
But then, obviously, in this film, spoilers. This is my choice. He is playing himself.
The night as well.
I watched it. Yeah, it's the whole thing is on YouTube. It's probably not a legal posting, but
it potentially is public domain. To be fair,
No, because it's not 100 years old yet. So,
Oh.
But it's got the New Line Cinema intro ident. So that was the only thing that made me think maybe New Line have gone. If it is just about to get into the public domain, let's put it on there ourselves.
Mine had the Genesis Films opening logo. Yeah. Mine is the Criterion edition. I actually bought this Sunday.
Did you?
And it arrived Sunday night for me to
Crikey.
Amazon.
Yeah, one of those drones dropped it off. Anyway, back to your description of the film.
It's a short, pacey film. It's only 73 minutes, I think.
I think it's longer than that.
It is.
I think it's 84
minutes.
Is it 73?
Yeah.
All right. Potentially, then, the YouTube version has a slightly different frame rate because I'm sure it's 84 on YouTube.
This is a nice 2K remaster of the film.
Lovely.
It's great.
Yeah, it's a wonderful film.
So yeah, the boy decides to move to the city to make his fortune, so he can marry his girlfriend at home, a girl. And he doesn't make his fortune. He's just a lowly clerk in a department store.
In a department store.
He's been lying and claiming he runs the store.
Yeah, that he's.
What were you going to say?
No, I was just.
We may as well talk about this film together as we've both picked it.
Yeah, I think. He claims he keeps writing home. There's a lovely little joke that in one of the title screens where they show the words, and where it jokes that there was a special day in the week where the girl knew that she would get a letter from the boy. That the name of that day was Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. This. So he's set his position higher than it actually is. And when she inevitably comes to visit later in the film, as the visit is going on, the position becomes higher and higher and higher and higher and higher until till she thinks that he actually runs the entire company, the whole building, not just he's the manager of that particular department that he works in.
The latter half of the film is the general manager offers $1,000 to anyone who can bring people
extra business
shop.
In. Yeah.
So earlier in the film, we discover his friend is good at climbing buildings.
Yeah, because it's during the period in America where skyscrapers were going crazy. So it's that famous image of people on iron girders putting skyscrapers together, and his best friend and flatmate is one of those guys. So
you have the latter half of first half of the film is arguably a workplace comedy.
Yep.
And the second half is a full set piece of Harold Lloyd climbing the department store.
Yeah.
And it is riveting.
It is. It's like it's so odd because you watch this film and it's 1923.
Yeah.
And for the time, it is a very long film, especially for American cinema. Like, I mean, obviously we've mentioned, what's it called? Metropolis, the German film, which is incredibly long. But like for the era, like 73 minutes is along the longer end of.
There was a lot of long films at the time.
But I mean, when you bear in mind that, like, say, 10 years previous to this, pretty much the longest film that you'd get coming out of Hollywood was maybe half an hour or something. And it was super basic, and it was all like very flat sets. The editing in this, I mean, like Citizen Kane quite often gets labeled as the first modern editing film, and yet this is watchable now.
Silent comedies are on the shorter side, but there was epics coming out as well, like Silent Cleopatras, and there was lots of long films.
But I think
what's worth noting is this was an era where film was truly a universal language. Because all films were silent, world cinema didn't have the problem of, and you shouldn't let subtitles put you off watching a film, guys, but it didn't have the problem of, oh, I don't like films with subtitles.
I think the other thing, though, it isn't even a case of I don't like films with subtitles. It's also context, that like when you're having a full conversation, if the subtitles have been translated inaccurately, then like context. Whereas with these, if it's just those occasional title cards that come up that have a handful of words, then, as you say, that's very easily translatable.
It was an era where film was truly a universal language.
It really was. It really was, and
that was lost when sound came into the into the picture.
But I think my point with this was actually how remarkably advanced it was. Like this does not feel significantly different to what exactly the same film would be now. You could make this film now into a 90-minute run.
Didn't The Rock just remake this a few years back?
Skyscraper?
Yeah.
No, but what I was thinking was, like, this would have been an incredible Jackie Chan film when he was in his earlier days. Like, if like Jackie Chan in the 90s, doing a remake of this, the slapstick genius. Because I mean, we talk about obviously the physical slapstick genius of Harold Lloyd and Chaplin and Buster Keaton. Like, Jackie Chan is a man out of his own time, really. Like he would have very well worked in the silent era, and I think I would have loved to have seen this film remade with Jackie Chan.
Why as well? I mean, worth noting about Harold Lloyd as well. Commonly referred to as the third genius. But out of the three of them, the one that's forgotten more.
Definitely.
Especially outside of people who like cinema, right? You say Charlie Chaplin to someone, and pretty much everyone knows who Charlie Chaplin is. Yeah. A lot of people would know who Buster Keaton is, but less than Chaplin.
They'd certainly recognise the name, even if they couldn't put their finger on it. They'd know that he had a cinematic significance.
And then you have Harold Lloyd, the equal of the two previously mentioned silent comedians, but probably the more forgotten of the three.
Yeah.
Also, his glasses character, as he's referred to, a inspiration on Clark Kent.
Yes, in particular Clark Kent in the Christopher Reeve films, because that was who Chris Reeve based his interpretation of Clark Kent on.
Even the creators of a comic based a lot of Clark Kent off of
I mean,
Harold Lloyd.
Which was actually why I wanted to do a Harold Lloyd film. Because obviously, if anyone's seen any of season 1 of this, you'll know I'm quite a big fan of the Chris Reeve films, anyway, and the Brandon Routh film. And I think there's a genius in Chris Reeve's performance, in particular, as Clark.
The physicality of that performance.
The physicality and the subtlety of that performance, that you could believe that the people around him, at least to begin with, would fall for the difference between Clark and Superman.
Yeah.
Because although obviously physical size and even facially they are similar, like they are so dissimilar character-wise, and their mannerisms, the way that they behave, how clumsy they are, and obviously a lot of that is informed by Harold Lloyd's performances, not just in this film but others as well. So I think I wanted personally to have a Harold Lloyd film just because he's important to modern cinema now.
Yes.
I mean, without that Superman film or those Superman films, we wouldn't have had the Batman films of '89 and onwards. So we wouldn't have then, we wouldn't have had the Marvel Cinematic Universe like we've had now, without Harold Lloyd. As ridiculous as that sounds, it might still have happened, but it would have been drastically different.
What is your, if you want to give a brief mention to your honourable pick, as you pick a second film because you thought we'd picked the same one here?
My first honourable pick is Metropolis. A
great film.
wonderful film. It's
not the birth of sci-fi, but
I think it's as we discussed with our zombie one last week, where like we posed that maybe The Birds is the first proper modern horror film and the first proper zombie film and what have you. I think that as far as what sci-fi became, is in no small part because of Metropolis.
I would go back a step earlier and say George Méliès's Trip to the Moon is probably...
Oh, yeah, I mean, that obviously is... Yeah, I think the combination of the two, because obviously science fiction isn't really a genre. Science fiction is a medium for storytelling.
It's a genre.
I wouldn't say it is, because you can have comedy science fictions, you can have horror, you can have thriller, you can
Well, that's combining genres. Sci-fi is still a genre. Horror. Is horror a genre?
Well, I think I mean, it's a conversation for a different time anyway. But I think the thing is that, like, obviously the combination
guide to genres. Maybe not a bad idea for an episode.
Maybe. So I think that obviously a very, very important film, and a film I love. We went to see it when it had a nice theatrical re-release about 10 years ago, and when it had a beautiful retouching, and they'd fully re-recorded the original soundtrack for it as well.
Saved an old lady on the way home.
We saved an old lady on the way home while I was wearing a Superman t-shirt, but that's a story for another time. And then my other one, and it's slightly more tenuous, but at the same time it actually pairs quite well with Harold Lloyd and the humor and the fun and things, was WALL-E, the Pixar film, which isn't completely silent, but
he does emote through sound.
He does emote through sound, but the two main characters don't necessarily speak properly anyway.
I would argue they don't speak a language we understand, but they do speak.
And therefore, it's not technically silent, but a lot of what they do is, or how they emote to us, is through action as opposed to language. So you've got quite a lot of the slapstick nature of the era, and obviously WALL-E is obsessed with an older musical. It's actually a musical from the 60s, not as old as it might look from the cinematic style, but there's definitely an element of that film being influenced by older cinema, and I think it plays with notions that obviously the silent era had to deal with, and it does it incredibly well, in the same way that, like, say, R2-D2 and BB-8 are beautifully emoted by yes, they're using a language, but we have no idea what they're actually saying, and yet somehow we can understand them. So it's a wonderful piece of genius that, not technically a silent film, but I think it kind of it pairs well, with silent cinema.
So my second film, and this is why my choice this week could be considered a touch lazy.
Yeah,
is I've decided to pair a Harold Lloyd film with a Harold Lloyd film.
Oh.
Speedy. From 1928. It is his last silent film. It is. This one runs for 86 minutes, so a bit longer. Has a guest appearance from Babe Ruth.
Huh.
Harold Lloyd plays a character called Harold Speedy, whose girlfriend's dad or granddad relative owns the last horse-drawn tram car, like carriage car in New York.
Oh, right.
And it's very much about juxtaposition of a high-speed New York City life, and then the slower pace of this tram car. And a tram magnate wants his track, so he can open more of his motorized ones.
Yeah,
but he doesn't want to sell up.
Understandably.
So it's all about how Lloyd tries to save the track. It's great. Again, some great set pieces. It ends on a big chase between some gangsters coming to, because American railway magnates and business magnates in general tended to have a mob on the side. So some mobsters come to try and take the track and destroy the cart by any means necessary. So you have this chase sequence where Harold Lloyd's trying to escape them, and the cart runs into various things. It's exactly the kind of thing you'd expect from this film, and again, a great piece of early filmmaking in regards to its editing and its composure. There's a wonderful scene at Coney Island Carnival where they go and take part of all the Coney Island attractions. It's more of the same, but I think if you're going to do a silent film double bill, why not watch two films by one of the greats?
And it sounds like, I mean, you say it's more of the same, but I mean, obviously there's a story within the story there of like the times are changing, and obviously the end of the horse-drawn carriage, and is really him talking about the end of silent cinema.
The horse-drawn tracks were still on rails as well. That's what.
Yeah, I know. Yeah. So it's him probably talking about the fact that this might be his last film. And
I think he potentially went on to make some talkies, but.
But I mean, did you say it was 28?
28, yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, that's the year of the first Oscars, and the first Oscars were held as a celebration of Charlie Chaplin, because everyone knew that Charlie Chaplin would suddenly have to start changing.
Yes.
It was the era of the end of the silence and the beginning of the talkies, and so obviously the Oscars themselves, like Charlie Chaplin won all 12 awards that day. And this Harold Lloyd, when he made this film, would have been completely aware of the fact that, like, potentially his career was over after this film.
His career went on much past this film. I believe this was his final silent film, but he made films all up to 47.
Yeah. But I mean, there would have been that fear.
Yeah, definitely.
There would have certainly been that fear.
Also worth
and
noting that,
and obviously it's a lost art form, really.
a lot of films of this era, and even early talkies, they pull a lot from vaudeville performances. A lot of it is what once would have been stage antics, and
well, yeah, exactly.
Even going into early talkie comedies like the Marx Brothers films.
Well, I mean, not just comedies. I think that even when you look at the dramas, a lot of dramatic performances were very stage-like performances. It's like many credit Marlon Brando as being the first real movie star. That essentially studied to become a film star, as opposed to being a film actor, as opposed to being a theatre actor that became a film actor. So yeah, I think that's one of the reasons really that I was quite surprised at how well composed and edited and paced the previous film was, because again, like with a little bit of filler that like modern cinema techniques and even just being able to get cameras in different positions and stuff like that. With a little bit of filler, you could have exactly the same script, and of course spoken dialogue. You could have exactly the same script as that and turn it into a 90-minute romantic comedy without any changes. You just literally have to write the dialogue for it. So that was remarkable.
What would be your second film then?
I mean, we say it's a lost art. But my second film is The Artist, which a relatively recent film. It's about 10 years old now. It is this century, yeah. And a very deliberate celebration of everything that we've just talked about. The craft of what these people did. And it is about a silent movie star who is coming to the end of the silent era towards the talkies, and is scared that his voice will not suit the talkies. And throughout the whole film, that's the line, really. And there's a lovely punchline at the end of the film, because you're expecting it because, oh, maybe it's too deep, or it's too squeaky, or it sounds a bit feminine, or this, that, and the other. And then right at the end, and of course, he speaks, and he has a very thick French accent. And that's the joke, and that's the punchline of the film. But in the meantime, it is a wonderfully, wonderfully created film. It's one of those...
French film, isn't it?
It is a French film, but like the thing is that, like, as technology moves on, and it's the same with anything really, like same with manufacturing and things like that, like the whole rush.
Back to what we just said as well, how silent cinema was a universal language, and here we have a French film speaking on American Hollywood.
Exactly, yeah. But I think it was, as I was saying, that I think the thing is that, like, in the last several years, like the word artisanal has become a thing, because we're looking for those older crafts now. We're looking for, because if we live in an era where like machine made things left, right, and center. So when you can find a handcrafted, whether it be like handmade bread or cake or a nice piece of furniture or something like that, it feels more special. It feels something like that. And I think it's the same with cinema, that crafting what they did for this film, and in particular, as odd as it sounds, shooting in the 4:3 ratio, which at this point, at least for cinema, the 4:3 ratio had been dead for a very long time. For TV, not so much, especially in America. But
as a cinematic ratio,
the 4:3 ratio had been dead for a very, very long time. So composing a shot,
30s easily.
It's more the 50s-ish. No, they were still shooting 4:3 into the 50s. It was it was in the 50s that they became obsessed with wider and wider and wider and wider lenses, and then it was only really in the 60s and 70s, I think, that they finalized on the current 16:9 or maybe 23:1 that we have. But yeah, so like even just the, I mean, I think we watched it when we finished university. I think it was the year after we finished university.
I do remember going to cinema to see it.
Yeah, and so obviously in our minds at the time, we were still fresh and thinking about composition and the actual, like, how would they make this and what have you. And so there's some wonderfully crafted sets. There's some, and again, like the simple things of just literally fitting it in that 4:3. So it didn't feel cramped, like making it feel dynamic.
An amazing dog in it.
Yep, fantastic. Obviously, like was all over the place, including at the Oscars.
Yeah.
But I think the other thing that struck me was it came at an appropriate time, culturally, because obviously in silent films, as we've discussed, you have those title cards where you have the brief details, whether it be a single line of dialogue followed by the response, or a very brief breakdown of what's been discussed and what's happening and what the scene is or what have you. And this was close to the point when this was released, where Twitter really became a very big medium, a very big social media. And of course, Twitter at the time had a maximum of, 140 characters, I think?
120, I think.
Might have been as little as that, yeah. So it was certainly no more than 140. And so tweets were, in essence, these tiny little snapshots of ideas and people still get in trouble for them now, even with the 280 limit or being able to do a whole thread. That like it challenges language. That being able to people obviously nowadays, a lot of people don't care about grammar or punctuation. Like there's even like there's been a movement recently to that the full stop or period, depending on what you'd like to call it, is an aggressive piece of punctuation and shouldn't be used in social media.
It sounds daft, but if someone's texting me and he leaves a full stop, my mind just goes like, why are they mad at me? What have I done?
You see, whereas I just put a full stop because it's the end of the sentence.
Yeah, but there is... Or,
like, I suppose if it's more like with Facebook with a chat line or something like that, I'll press enter so it's on a different line.
I use full stops on Twitter and things, but in direct communication, there is something aggressive about a full stop. Like,
and I think, and again, I mean, I think that's like, whether I agree or disagree with you, I think that like that's what social media has done, and because it's changed the nature of what written language can be, and so you've now got a formal and informal discourse in text as well, and I think that this film came around at a time when obviously that was becoming a thing. Excuse me. So having a film that the only language that you were going to get access to was within potentially a 140 character limit on the title cards was, I don't know whether it was deliberate or not, but I think it was perfectly timed. I think it was the right film for the right time, because that discourse was already beginning to happen, of, you know, what does language mean in a social media time. So
it won all the Oscars because Hollywood loves nothing more than a film about Hollywood.
It did, but then I think it deserved it. Like, I mean, the other film that was successful that year was Melancholia, which was I suppose the last not completely offensive Lars von Trier film, that you could watch it without being scared that you might see lots of genitals and potentially graphic mutilation. But it was, I think, it was. I mean, it was certainly a good film. It was certainly a good year, I think, for not necessarily independent cinema, because neither of those had a tiny budget. Like they were, I think, Melancholia had a $5 million budget, and this had an $8 million budget, from what I remember. So small for Hollywood, but fairly large for truly independent cinema. But it was certainly a good year for filmmakers who don't necessarily get the mainstream exposure, I suppose.
On that note, I think preparing is obvious. I think it's Safety Last and the Artist.
Yeah, I think so. I think
However,
it's,
if you do want to watch 2 Harold Lloyd films, Speedy, definitely worth a watch.
Yep. But I'd say, I mean, we usually try and watch films that are available legally.
If you're in the States, I believe both of these Harold Lloyd films are on the Criterion channel. If you're in the UK, they are purchasable on Blu-ray from Criterion.
Out of interest, how much were they?
If you don't buy them during, so the Criterion collection is a great collection of films that are worth building up if you want a collection of great films. However, you are best buying them on their twice a year buy one get one free deals, as a single Blu-ray is usually £18.
Fair enough.
Sometimes a little bit more. Worth it for what you're getting. You get booklets, a decent collection of special features. It's a very nice put together package. But
I think it's a good quality Blu-ray usually as well, isn't it? They don't go and I think Criterion quite often make sure they've got a nice cleaned up. As you said, that's a 2K version of.
Yes, they will. It'll always be a good-looking version of the film. But yeah, twice a year in the UK. In America, they have a Barnes and Noble sale where they heavily discount them by 50%. In the UK, twice a year, they make them buy one, get one free.
Fair enough. Fair
but they were never in the UK for many years. We have our own great boutique labels like Eureka's Masters of Cinema or Arrow Academy and Arrow Video. Arrow Video being schlocky, Arrow Academy being a little bit more fancy film. But yeah, we have some great boutique labels in the UK, but Criterion was one that was American only. And over the past few years, they've started licensing and releasing some films in the UK as well. Not their entire library, but the stuff they can get the UK license for, they release over here too. And yeah, they're a great way to build up a library of good kind of films. Which I'm the person who usually comes on here and delivers the schlockiest thing you can think of. So
yeah, but there's nothing wrong with having a broad base of taste, is there?
Nope.
No. Yeah, so I hope you've enjoyed that. What's the theme for next week?
The theme for next week is, well, we haven't quite finished this episode yet.
Oh, yes, of course.
The theme for next week is going to be, bear with me while I open my OneDrive. Musicals. It's a double cleffing bill.
Oof. So I'm looking forward to that one.
So yeah, right, musicals next week.
I think you're going to take us out.
This week's, as we like to delight you with a cinema snack, and as this as we talk about silent films, I thought I would discuss. Everyone knows what gobstoppers are, right?
Yes.
Everyone knows a good gobstopper. Well, there was a sweet company that went under because of the dangerousness of its sweets, but it developed a gobstopper so sour that you couldn't. It numbed your mouth to the point that you couldn't speak afterwards. They were quite popular in cinemas because it meant people weren't talking throughout films and things. Parents would give them to their kids to shut them up for a bit. But yeah, it just numbed all the muscles in the mouth and the tongue to the point where you couldn't speak for a good hour after eating it.
Good Lord. And of course, it had that much sugar that you needed to go and see a dentist afterwards. Yeah. So, but of course, it had already done the numbing, so it would save the dentist some money. So the dentist could pull a tooth that needed to be pulled because of the gobstopper, but by using the other effects of said gobstopper.
They were on the market for about 5 years before they were deemed to be too dangerous to sell.
Was it the same company that it was quite an old company, I believe. I think it was birthed in the Victorian era, and was it the same one that had radium irradiated sweets so that they glowed in the early 1900s? Yeah.
Yes.
Quite popular in certain wealthy fields where you could get such expensive sweets. So yeah, but yeah, sadly gone. The radioactive gobstoppers. So. And on that note,
we'll see you next week for a bit of a sing.
Yeah, and a bit of a song.
I've even heard that Matt is going to sing a musical introduction to the episode.
Oh. Well, challenge accepted. Maybe. We shall see on that one. On that note, we'll see you next week. As always, like, subscribe, and if you've got your own double feature suggestions,
pop them in the comments below.
Pop them in the comments below. Thank you very much. Goodbye.